So my name is Monica Martinez, Monica Aisa Martinez. Aisa is my middle name. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I have an undergraduate degree in metalsmithing and ceramics, and then graduate school was printmaking and drawing. And I currently teach at Phoenix College. I teach drawing. And my interest is anatomy and physiology. And I would say in the last couple of years, I've become interested in microorganisms. And then, well, here we are with our subject matter of the hour. It's what brings us here today, and it's what brings us here kind of in this virtual world. I was listening to something this morning where they were talking about social distancing and how maybe that's really not the right term. And I agreed with it because we're using social media to connect. You would never get to see me on a Saturday afternoon. I wouldn't be in your house and you wouldn't be in my studio. But this whole event has made some changes. So we're physically distancing, but I'm not convinced that we're socially distancing. So that's just something I thought I'd talk about today because I was hoping to avoid Zoom, and look, here I am. Thanks, Michelle. I'm happy to kind of move into the 21st century too. So I think I called my workshop something like, can you really see a virus? I can't remember what I called it, but I wish I'd called it something like the grand experiment, because it is kind of a crazy time and we're dealing with, a little organism that we don't understand. We don't understand what's going on. And so remember that in this workshop, I'm going to be talking to people, if it's like workshops that I've done for Tempe Center for the Arts in the past, maybe 6 years old to, I don't know, 60, 70, all ages. I remember having grandparents and their grandkids. So I'm hoping to talk across board. And I'm going to be really careful about what I say about the virus, only because remember, I'm an artist and there's so much stuff about this that I don't know and that we don't know. So we're going to be drawing a virus, and the last year, like I said, I was interested in the world of microbes. I started studying the microbiome, viruses, bacteria, fungi, archaea, and then here we are. A virus shows up and gives me something to focus on. So when the world stopped, I got busy. You can see behind me, this is some of my artwork. I paint, I draw, I occasionally print make. I have all sorts of microorganisms on my wall. I have my first version of the coronavirus is up here. And then this is my most recent painting of the coronavirus. It's a fairly large image because I collaged in a map of the world. This whole thing started in China, and then I kind of tracked how it moved. So I was collaging and building up. I bought a map. I have a neighbor who owns a map store, so he gave me this really beautiful map that he had designed. And at this point, you don't see it anymore because the virus took over. All my painting took over. But if I was to bring you up close, you might be able to see parts of the country, of the globe. Here, this area would be the United States. So two things that I want to focus on when we're looking at a coronavirus. The name of the coronavirus comes from its spike proteins. So all the edges, which give it the sense of a crown. I think of the word corona, crown, sun. So that's where the name comes from. It's these spike proteins. And I'm going to show you my small image so you can see them a little closer. See these? These are spike proteins. And as I'm reading about this virus and preparing for this workshop, boy, all the parts of it are made up of proteins. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Virus means slimy, liquid poison, pathogen. Now, I'm gonna emphasize that because when it comes to coloring your virus, I want you to think about that. When you think of slimy, what color comes to mind? When you think of liquid poison, now liquid for me was blue, poison was kind of a green, a slimy yellow green. So all of my spikes are blue, but if you look closely, there's this green edge, and it kind of comes in different places. So think about that when you're choosing colors for your virus. Slimy, liquid, poison. It's a pathogen. Their job is to reprogram a cell. I'm gonna put that here so you guys could see. So their job is to reprogram a cell. The coronavirus, again, gets its name from that spike protein. It resembles a center crown. And that, I think of a cactus here in Arizona, the jumping choyas. You know, they kind of attach themselves to you. Well, think about the spike on this virus. That's what it does. It kind of comes and it attaches and it invades. And in this case, it's attaching and invading human tissue cells. And that's why we have to be careful. So let's see, the disease is called COVID-19. The virus is the coronavirus. Two things that really identify it are the spikes, the spike protein, and this little form inside, which I'm going to talk in terms of line, texture, structure, form, color. This little form in here is RNA. It's a single, let's see, I don't want to get this wrong. So I'm going to make sure that it's a positive sense single-stranded RNA, which allows this virus to mutate quickly. These little circles that you see, they're nucleocapsids, they're protein. This is a membrane. Think of an edge, the contour. And if you come up and if you can still see me, contour, edge, texture, interesting structure, interesting texture. The RNA virus would be this line, this white line with all the little circles on it. I always have a very simple diagram that I pull from the internet, and I always have something that's labeled. I'm learning as I'm going, and I want, as I learn, you learn. And just so that you all know, I have a blog, and I tend to, most everything I do is in there step by step. So as I'm learning, you really are learning. Let's see, so, all right. What else do I have to tell you? I think I've introduced myself. I've introduced my work. So I would have this sample near my area. I would also, I'm going to show you a couple of other samples. See this sample right here? This is something more common that you would see on the internet. And notice that all my samples that would be on my desk are in black and white. And the reason that they're in black and white is because I want to add the color. So that's why I emphasize virus, slimy, liquid, poison, pathogen. So when you think of those words, what colors will you choose? So this image appeals to me because it's the outside of the virus and then the internal structure of the virus. And I tend to do both. I'd also have something like this nearby. You know, I don't know what to call this. I'm going to guess that maybe they're molecules. This is an image that's letting us see the virus really close up. Maybe the proteins. So all that texture, I now have permission to come in and add to my work. I don't see myself as an illustrator, so I'm not giving you exact imagery. I'm an artist, and so I start with something very exact, and then I abstract. So this image is what I use as sample for this workshop. Sometimes I work on maps. I have a neighbor who owns the World of Map store, and so I'm always up there buying maps. And I'm going to tell you right now that I think this workshop is an hour, and this image, this little bit of work probably took me 4 hours. So I don't move very fast. I'm careful, I'm slow, I'm looking, I'm reading, I'm researching. And for this workshop, if I wanted to, I could still come back into this and work for the whole hour on this, but I'm probably not going to do that. Here's something else that I'm more likely to work on. This is a sheet of mylar. And why is it in a circle? So here's the virus. You know, I got these, boy, the name just left me. Like I said, this is a grand experiment and I'm multitasking and nervous. So Petri dish, that's what that is, Petri dish. So I ordered some Petri dishes because we would see those cells and slices and information in a lab inside a Petri dish. So that's how this will be displayed if I wanted to display it. I also do larger, smaller images. I use BFK drawing paper, Arches drawing paper. So I'm not going to use paper today, but a decollage is my favorite thing. Here's a little sketch of something on a map, and I love the texture behind it. Sometimes I can come on in and let you know something that I'm talking about, an area. For example, this original piece, there's the canal. Tempe Center for the Fine Arts is kind of located somewhere in this area. So we're doing a workshop at the Tempe Center for the Arts, and so even the map tells you something about what I'm doing, why. And I think this is a Phoenix map because I'm at home. Here's another sketch that I might start working on. Proteins, spikes, identify this. And so does that RNA strand. Those two things are really important for this virus. That RNA strand, I'm gonna look at my notes because I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. Yeah, of course. RNA strand, it's a positive sense single strand RNA, and it is what allows this virus to mutate quickly. It travels on a sneeze, it travels on a cough. One of the reasons that we are having to keep distance from each other is because, you know, my pencil. I leave germs on this pencil. This pencil now becomes a fomite, which means it's got germs on it that the next person that can come up and touch it can pick up. That's a great word I learned, fomite. So this paper, I'm touching it, leaving stuff on it, fomite. Sometimes I find words and my drawings take on, I start something just because I like words. So here's my pencils. I listened in on an earlier drawing show. I also start with really sharpened pencils, and I do have an electric sharpener, but I also have a hand sharpener that I use, and this is always at my desk. Today we might use some markers for kids, Pentel markers, bright colored. What are these jelly rolls, these jelly pens? These are actually really great to work with. I don't have a whole lot of those. This is one of my favorite tools. See that? That's a micro pen, archival. So most everything that I use, well, I'm going to say everything I use is archival. So I'm not inclined to use markers like this, but kids, have fun, go at it. I have some favorite like a eraser. That's my favorite eraser. Drawing pencil. I work with a lot of water-soluble pencils. Boy, where's my favorite black pencil? Here it is, my favorite pencil. A lot of people have asked me, this is a film marker. I get this at Arizona Art, and it draws on everything. I mean, it can go on anything. And then it's water-soluble, so it comes right off. So my, this stuff it works on, thick, thin paper, it works on everything. It's really my favorite pencil, drawing pencil. All right, here's a couple of other little, so now you can see that I really just did trace out this little cell. I put it on the map. And I'm kind of giving you general information. Here's a little tiny one. I am gonna finish this at some point. Those spike proteins tell you it's a coronavirus. What was the other thing I told you that made it a coronavirus? It's that RNA protein. It's a single strand RNA. Human cells, well, we have double helix DNA. So RNA are different in that way. Single strand. Oh, and it's a line, and I want to play with it. My sharpened pencil. The nucleocapsids, the little proteins. I'm working on, you know, I have to say that I like sound. I like the shuffling of paper. I like the pencil on a piece of mylar. I like drawing on paper and making a sound. And that's one of the things that I miss when I'm painting on canvas. I don't get a sound that I like. So sound, touch. The other fun thing that I'll tell you is, so this is a light box. It's actually not a real light box. You know what it is? I got this from a doctor here in the Valley. It's X-ray box. And for me, it acts as a light box, but it's an old X-ray box. I think the new ones are digital now. So my studio is filled with fun things that, that doctors have given me. I have a lot of fun stuff. And I like working on this because it makes some cool sound. So I'm gonna take my micro pen so that I could show you a really dark. I like a nice line. I like a strong edge. You know, I teach drawing at Phoenix College. I teach drawing 1 through 4, beginning through advanced. And my students work realism. So they learn to see and put down what they see. The thing about a microorganism is it can't be seen with the naked eye. With my glasses, I even have all my students use magnifying lens, and you can't see a microorganism with any of this. You need a microscope, and you actually need a really high-powered one. So one of the things that I'm hoping is, you know, as humans, we kind of have this. If you don't see it, you don't believe it. So I'm introducing you to this virus really in a detailed way. You guys are going to be drawing your own virus, and I hope that you show me what you're doing, complete or not complete. Maybe you post it, because you know I like seeing images. But my students couldn't draw this. Now I did have access to to a microscope. I have a neighbor that sells microscopes. Funny, I have great neighbors that lend me all sorts of stuff. And it would have been fun to get it, but that would have just made things a little hard. But draw what you see. You need to see the image in order to be realistic and work that way. Well, we can't see this, but I've studied them. I have all my copies. And really at this point, I'm just gonna play. I work very organically. So see how this black line is just a little different than that pencil mark? So all the lines are a little different. I'm gonna do that RNA strand. Oh, this one doesn't work so well. And I've got Sharpies. I've got other things I could work with, but on Mylar, I like this micron. This is a little bit of a thicker micron. My students use these. Hear the sound? I bet for some people that would be like a scratch board noise, but not for me. So now I think I'm gonna get pencil colors. And I sharpened all of mine before class started. I hope you guys can see this. I have to keep looking up and down when really I just want to draw. All right, so spike proteins. I'm gonna start thinking poison, liquid poison. You know that they consider viruses non-living, and I think they're highly intelligent. I'm not sure why they think they're non-living, but I think it has something to do with the fact that they can't survive on their own. They need to hijack their host cells. That means, oh, humans. Well, in this case, right? Although I think that they call this virus zoonotic, which means it can go from animal to human. Spike proteins. I always see them red. I just think, I don't know. Red is that kind of survival color, maybe. And so this is what I do. I just kind of, there's that, there's that slime, liquid poison. Although I have to say that this is one of my favorite colors. Somebody told me that viruses, there was more viruses than any other biological life on the planet. Gosh, that's hard to imagine. Biological entity. That's an interesting way to identify this. You know what I love to do? I like to get books and draw in a book. Like I could draw a virus in a book and leave it there. And then somebody comes to read it, and then there's my drawing of a virus. I'd date it so they could know when I did it. A little bit of history. I have a lot of medical books that, again, I have friends that retired doctors that have given me their books. Isn't that cool? You know, I never imagined that this is what I was going to be doing. I'd be working with anatomy and physiology and learning science. It's been a really great surprise for me. And in my drawing class, I get a lot of science students. And I give them credit if we do something and they bring a little science fact. I think science and art are great complements. So my students, if they draw something and then they give me like a science fact about it. For example, we draw I don't know, if we go outside and draw a tree and they give me the Latin name and give me a little bit of information, and then we share that at critique, they get extra credit. So here's a spike protein inside space. So we're doing the external and then the internal. I just want to emphasize that. And maybe I even want to emphasize it with a marker. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah. It's a little bit of a heavier line, right? So here's my pencil color and there's my marker. I would think I might want to emphasize the spikes and the RNA strand. I wish I could. Yeah.
It's Michelle. Hey, I just was kind of curious because I know you mainly for doing work that is about the human anatomy and about health and your connection to that. Do you think you hadn't become an artist that you would have gone into healthcare in some way?
Well, you know, when I was in college and undergraduate school, I went through physical education, not necessarily thinking I would be in physical education. I thought that I could take that into the health and wellness world. And so I did both tracks. I did phys ed and art. And I thought, I'll make up my mind at some point what I want to do, because they're both physically demanding. They really were both physical, because art, you know, our classes, our studio classes were 3 hours long. And sometimes I was in a studio overnight. I loved it. It was heavy work, physical, and so was the education, the phys ed part. So I knew that I'd have to make up my mind at some point. And my junior year, it was art. It was art because I started drawing. I was in the metalsmithing, making small scale sculpture and jewelry. And then I started drawing. I met an instructor, Kurt Kemp, printmaking and drawing. And that was it. I made up my mind. It was that quick. I've never let go of physical movement. I was a long distance runner. When I came to Phoenix, Arizona, I started studying yoga. I did a teacher's training and thought that I would teach yoga. And every time I moved towards that, stepped into that world, I had an art opportunity come up. Every time. And I never hesitated. I took the art path. But what I did do was I plugged in the teacher's training that I'd learned into my classroom. So there's a whole philosophy on how to teach. And I plugged it all in. And when I'm talking to my students, sometimes I talk about, you know, handstands and how we think when people go up with ease, we think it's really easy, but it's actually a whole lot of muscles and a lot of training and a lot of skill that's allowed them to go up with that ease. And so I explain kind of the discipline and focus of art and learning to draw in that same way, that people might think it's really easy after you've learned it and have done it for a while, but you know all the hard work that was behind it. I love the sciences. I kind of got away from that question, but I love the sciences, and I was good in science. I was good at math. I was good at chemistry, but I still chose the arts. I think I'd be willing to be in the medical world or the science world. Maybe I would have, as opposed to health and wellness. I don't know. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yes, that does very much. Thank you for sharing.
One of the great opportunities that I had, I've learned, because I've developed a reputation and I think people know that I'm serious about this. even though right now I'm having a lot of fun, you know, I'm pretty intense when I work. And I do a lot of research. And because it's science, I make sure that that I have facts. And if I'm confused about something, I know enough people that I can pick up the phone or email and ask. So I'm really serious about this. And you know, one of the opportunities I had as an artist in residence there was I got to go to the brain bank. And so there's some really wonderful opportunities that I've had where I'm in environments that are extraordinary. And it's because I'm an artist and I take this work so serious. And I think I've developed something that's allowed me to go into those environments. And that was one of the highlights of, I would say maybe the last 5 years, to go into that brain bank. I've had other opportunities come up where, you know, people have contacted me so that maybe I could go work and do something with microorganisms. And I would love to do that. Educate and make art, public engagement projects would be, you know, where you mix the arts and the sciences. That kind of stuff really, really intrigues me.
Hey, Monica.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe what you're doing right now?
Yep, I was going to. So this, see, I'm thinking of liquid poison. I don't know, blue is not poison, but the liquid part of it is what I'm sort of trying to accentuate. And then I'm going to come in with another color. But I want fluidity, I want movement. You know, I get so serious when I do this, and I'm talking about a virus, so I have to keep light. You know, I don't think that they really know what this virus looks like. I don't think that they know everything about it. And so, and the colors that we see when we look on the internet, here's that green. Those colors are injected into the slide so that they could see the parts. So I'm kind of messing with this on the edge, and I've seen so many images that I'm kind of playing with some stuff that I've seen. There's organelles inside this virus. So I'm working fairly quickly. Like these lines, I would have to come in and edge them out because I would want some to really stand out, separate from the others. And there's all this great stuff happening inside of these viruses. And I've looked at so many that they're in my memory, but I would still tell you that I'm using my imagination. I would still say that. I would say that because I am. It's important. This is science. Ooh, I don't think that pink is one of my favorite colors, but don't you think of like liquid poison, that it might glow in the dark? I bet it would. I don't like pink though, I have to say. Not this bright pink, but I'm gonna still put it in there. It just feels right. So these are drawings. I'm only using drawing materials, but I also would use inks. I'd use casing paint. I would do mixed media work, and I might tone some of that pink down. Right now, I'm going to highlight it. This is a great way to have conversation with kids about maybe why they had to stay home this year and why we don't really know what's going on in the world and why we have to wear masks. This is kind of a great way to open the door to a conversation and get a sense of, I don't know, understanding and some control maybe. I don't know that we have control, but maybe lighten up some of the fear.
Monica,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's kind of an overall goal of your work anyways, is to kind of take the fear and the yuck factor out of the human body and how it works?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that is a great question. You know, one of the things I understand about my work is that people are going to come to it and be squeamish with it. But because most, you know, my full human anatomy studies, I always expect that people are going to be a little hesitant to approach it. I want to prod their curiosity. Most of the people that I've drawn, I've known. So these are people that I know and I can talk about them in a more intimate manner, and I want them to relate to the form in a more personal manner. I want them to not be so squeamish about it. I also want them, I would hope that I can pull out a sense of respect for the body. You know, we only have one. Yeah, we only have one. And so I would want them to respect the body that they have and be curious about it. Its function, it's when it's in balance, out of balance, and there's pain. Pay attention.
Monica, we also have a media question. Veronica wants to know, is there casing used in the background or as a highlight, or maybe both?
Veronica, is this a Veronica that I know? The reason why I would ask that question is because, you know, casein is not something that would just roll off the top of people's mouths, and it's a protein. And what did I learn about casein just recently? Oh, I know. Well, it's a long story, but you know, it's a milk protein. So this image right here, this does have casein in it.
Veronica says you do know her.
Of course.
Veronica C. Veronica C.
Yeah, Veronica has a whole set of casein paints. Yes, Veronica, this does have this piece has casein in it. And casein is a water-soluble material. And Veronica has a whole set of casein paints. So there you go. Yes. The one that I'm working on now, no, because look at how different this looks. Like I'm not thinking, I'm playing with it, but I'm going to pull back some of my, my brain just drew a blank, you know, some of my examples here so that I could start to get back into the groove.
You are at the 10-minute mark now, Monica.
That is fast.
I know, isn't it?
It is fast. I hope I've taught you all something. I don't want to create fear. I really want to create respect and awareness. I think that we're, you know, this whole shift in what I just said earlier, for me, it's made a big difference. This, like not thinking about, what was the word I used? That we aren't really socially distancing. We are physically distancing because we have to, and it's temporary because this bug is a little bit of a mystery to us. But we're still connecting, we're learning, we're evolving. And we'll have this thing figured out. This is really playful. That looks like a doily, doesn't it? But I would still keep working it and darkening it so that it does become something more structured and more, I want to show you something. So this has casein in it, but it also has graphite. And when the light hits the graphite, look how beautiful that is. And this is why all my materials matter to me, because I look at them and I want them to be beautiful. This is a pretty scary bug. It's a nasty, scary bug, but it is an aesthetically pleasing bug. It really is. So I think that this piece right here would be a little too bright for my preference. I'd really come in and I'd start darkening this up with markers. But if I have any like 6 and 7-year-olds, I bet they love this. I hope they're having as much fun as I am.
Monica, do you have some favorite colored pencils, some favorite markers and things? You know, I'm thinking of the more ordinary art supplies that that folks might be able to pick up.
Yeah, good question. So I am all over the valley. You know, we have some good stores here in Phoenix, and we have some great stores in Tempe. And my favorite drawing pencil, color pencils, are Prismacolors. I also teach my students to use these. This is Prang. This is a water soluble pencil. It's not my favorite, but it's water soluble. And so that's its benefit. But my favorite would be Prisma. This is my favorite drawing pencil, and I know a lot of people hate it, but I like it. Like, I've shown this to other artists and they've gone like, oh, you draw with that. I love it. It's Beryl, turquoise. And again, I said that the microns were my favorite because they're archival. You know, for kids, they can use Sharpies. This has a finer point, and this is archival. This does fade a little bit in time. And you know, Michelle, I work with casein paint and egg tempera, non-toxic, and because my studio's in my home, that works for me. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, and you all introduced me to these gel pens. Now, I love the gel pens. I just don't know if they're archival, so I hesitate to use them. I have something here that I brought. You know, I use a lot of inks. Now, this is old. I don't even know if they make this kind of ink anymore, but I have these metallic inks. And so after the drawing portion of this, I would come and highlight this with ink. This is gesso. I think right now this is very flat, and I would come in with, but look at it at that angle. You know, seen in the right light, upright, this is, all of these materials show up. And then you can see how different that looks, right? And I think how different that is, huh? Here I am more focused. Single-stranded RNA, spike proteins. That tells you that this is a coronavirus. Any other questions before we sign out soon?
Monica, I just gave people your web address. You want to talk about your blog a little bit? That's kind of unique.
Okay. Oh, the other thing that I always have, you know, like this is very organic, but I've got all these little circles, and sometimes I really want control, and I have all of this stuff. I have a lot of supplies, you know, that architects use because they're very precise. My blog, so that's MonicaAisaMartinez.wordpress.com. I have a website also, and you can access the blog through the website and vice versa. But my blog is really educational. I think of it like, well, I think of it like a journal where I write everything down and keep track of it. I try not to be so conscientious with it. I try to be a little more free form, but sometimes I can't do that. But yes, you can go in there. In fact, I have a blog post about the coronaviruses that I started drawing when we went into shutdown back in March. I have a post called "When It Rains, It Pours." And we were raining. We had a few days of rain, and this is right before school. We didn't know we were going to come back from spring break. So I was playing with the title. And then I talk about the coronavirus, and I have 4 in there that I've made. Like I said, when we went into isolating, I really became active. I really became curious about what we're dealing with. I'm going to tell you my favorite places to go to. So TWIV, This Week in Virology, they update 2 to 3 times a week. And those are scientists talking, but they make it very approachable. COVID Conversations, YouTube with Dr. Coffee Brown, and he's out of New Mexico. And they also make it very approachable. And Ologies with Ali Ward. And all of these links I have in my blog where I talk about viruses. I listen to podcasts when I'm working. I listen to podcasts when I'm out running. I'm informing myself all the time in preparation for coming into my studio. If you need to contact me or just want to send me your work or connect, the blog is a way to do it.
So Monica, in wrapping up, I'm just going to add to your resource list. I mentioned this one earlier today and people seem to like it, but ASU has a great thing called Ask a Biologist.
Yeah, I actually look at that. You know what else ASU has? They have a podcast called Zombified. I think it's called Zombified Podcast. And they talk about all things science, and they have cool music, very approachable, very informative. And she interviews, it's a woman out of ASU. She interviews scientists and people from all over the country, and it's out of ASU, and it's one of my favorites. They talked about the virus, but they talked about it before all this stuff happened, so.
Yeah. All right, Monica, we've got to wrap it up.
Well, thank you
so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.